time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Well, I haven't told anybody this to this point, but on my way back from Clemson yesterday, I did stop in Simpsonville. I did stop by a store owned by Mr. Patel. Bought a lottery ticket from the store owned by Mr. Patel in Simpsonville. I haven't looked at the ticket.
And you used it to wipe your nose because you knew it was bogus. It was not the winning ticket.
If I am the guy with the winning tickets, don't come crawling to me for money, for bailouts, for loans. Can you believe somebody in the state of South Carolina owns the ticket? That's pretty cool. Actually, my ticket was bought here in Columbia.
Somebody went through South Carolina, stopped in Simpsonville, got the ticket, but they live in New Jersey.
Possible. Mm-hmm. I didn't get one number. I didn't have one number that rolled out last night. Do you have any?
I don't deal with that.
Oh, what are you, like Andre Bauer? You don't believe in the lottery?
No, you can do it if you want to, but hey, I've already won the lottery.
All right, welcome into Sports Talk. It is a big day in South Carolina because it's pretty exciting that perhaps a resident of our state is now a billionaire, or, well, by the time he or she gets the money, depending on how they take it, they'll be a millionaire many times over, many times over, because the lump sum will be $900 million.
If the winner of that ticket is listening right now,
you know they are.
Read the story of King Midas and then be humbled by it. I would be scared to death with all that money.
Yeah, well, I'd like to have that opportunity to be scared.
Scared to death.
That's the kind of fear I'd love to have to deal with. I'd figure out a way to handle it.
Let me put it this way. If I did come with all that money and stuff, I would be sitting here with the raggediest stuff on, still working, and nobody would know.
Mm. You know, I'm thinking it could be. I know the person with that ticket is a listener to Sports Talk because that's just how our audience is. I'm thinking it could be Delvin from Fountain Inn. We haven't heard from him in a while. Fountain Inn is right there near Simpsonville. Delvin, if you're listening, let us know if you have the winning ticket. Meantime, the word out of New York today, guilty on all counts, the three folks in that college basketball conspiracy trial, including Merle Code, the former Clemson guard who was an Adidas rep. And so they face sentencing in March, could face 2 to 4 years as a result of that. And that no doubt sent a buzz through the Spectrum Center in Charlotte, where the ACC basketball brass, coaches and players gathered today. We sent our brass, that's BRASS, brass, to Charlotte as well. That would only be Will Pelagic.
The brash brass, I guess you could say.
I guess so. How are you?
Good evening, Corn. It's funny. I would even call it fortuitous from the fact that right when that verdict went down, the only coach who had not spoken to the breakout media was none other than Duke head coach Mike Krzyzewski, and he went on about a 14-minute rant, which we'll play some of for you here in our next segment. But I find it interesting how the rest of college basketball will react to this, because while it seems like a lot of people will say outwardly that they are in favor of some sort of reform, no one seems to either have any idea or is willing to step up to the plate and contribute to its reform. And I think it's just a situation like we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks, guys. It's like, put your money where your mouth is. If you really think that college basketball needs a reform, well, let's get it on. Yeah,
and I'm sure that Krzyzewski, and we'll hear what he had to say, he's still trying to walk back his comments of last week when he was asked about it. And he's saying that he didn't mean to say it's not a big deal. It's just not a big deal to him because he's never lost a player to all that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you know, that chicken kind of came home to roost a little bit with Zion Williamson's name being mixed up in the testimony.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the one thing that that Krzyzewski did say, and this is the words that he put, and this is not in the quote that we're going to play for you, but he did say that he being Williamson and the two other freshmen who were highly regarded, remember where they got like the number 1, 3, and 4 players from ESPN's top 100. He said that all 3 of those guys went through his word invasive basically clearance from the eligibility center, which what used to be called the clearinghouse, and they went so far as to go through personal records, bank records, and again, the word he used was invasive, and so he, as a result of that, has no doubt about the eligibility of any of his players that have gone through that process. He doesn't believe that they'll have to go through any further process, though when you think about the testimony that included Williamson, one wonders whether or not he'll have to kind of go back through the ringer, but he says that he doesn't believe he's risking anything by playing Williamson when the season opens on November 6th.
Well, we already saw today, too, as the fallout of this moves across the country. And, of course, Kansas, NC State, and Louisville were the 3 schools fingered in the trial for being actively involved in all this. And today, Kansas announced that their forward, Silvio De Sousa, will be held out of competition moving forward as they review his eligibility. You know, this is sort of like after closing the barn door after the cows have run out, because he played in 20 games last year, including their 5 NCAA tournament games. They're liable for any games that he played in that they won. They're liable to have to forfeit and also, erase their presence in the Final Four last year from the record books.
Well, he might as well be John Philip Sousa at this juncture. But the key point is, maybe John Calipari was using an analogy, but what he said had a vein of truth when you talk about people wanting reforms. They said, well, if we change this, schools will still complain. And so his retort was, well, some of us always are going to be able to shop first, meaning that we're going to have our first dibs on the top players because we got to have the top schools. But maybe he was meaning something else as far as that's concerned.
And it's interesting, Pro, one of these schools in the ACC actually got off kind of scot-free. Miami was one of the schools initially that was mentioned in these allegations and a lot of the things that were being involved with Adidas and Nike. And yesterday, as a result of the, redone transcripts, they redacted Miami, or at least they said Miami was not part of the testimony. So Miami was basically cleared of any wrongdoing, which is at least a good thing from them and for their perspective from Jim Larinaga.
All right, looking forward to hearing what Coach K has to say. We'll get to that coming up after the next break because that is pertinent news. We'll also hear from Clemson head coach Brad Brownell. We'll have recruiting for you. The M&M boys will be here at the top of the hour. Looking forward to that. A little bit of Roy Williams from North Carolina as well. Clemson guards Marquise Reed and Shelton Mitchell, the primetime backcourt for the Tigers. So we have got a bunch of stuff for you. Dante Scott, a little while ago up in Philadelphia, announced a commitment to the Maryland Terps. So South Carolina was one of his final schools. They do not get him. The Gamecocks do have a 6'9" forward from Georgia coming in for an official visit next weekend. We'll tell you about that. We'll update other things as well. Ryan Helinski. Ryan Helinski put out a little cryptic tweet last night about today being his birthday and that he's now a man. I guess he must have hit 18. And you have to make man-like decisions when you're 18 that affect your life. And what he is doing is nothing that's going to upset Gamecock fans. He is visiting South Carolina with his parents this weekend for the Tennessee game, and you'll see eventually here today when he puts it out, I believe, a reaffirmation of his pledge to South Carolina. I think there was some concern after Stanford offered him because that was kind of like his dream school, and some concern that he might take a closer look at Stanford. Not going to be the case. In fact, he told me that the parents are going to be looking to pick out their house while they're in Columbia this weekend.
I thought maybe he was talking about this would be his first time casting a vote.
Well, that could be too. That's not going to happen today unless they've got early voting in California.
They probably do.
All right, we'll be back with more from Will. Stay tuned. You want to hear from Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski, the king of college basketball. We'll have that for you coming up after the break. We'll work in some phone calls as well. 800-956-7266. It's Sports Talk on a Wednesday night from the capital city.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
We're back in Charlotte, Sports Talk at ACC Operation Basketball. Will Pelagic, Phil Kornblue, Professor Tom Hayes here with you. Sorry about that alarm in the last segment. They were actually moving the Jumbotron back up to the rafters, so they basically brought it down at the event level with the ACC Operation Basketball paraphernalia all over it, and so now they were just moving it up to its customary spot in the rafters. As we mentioned to you in the opening segment, Christian Dawkins, Merle Code, and the folks up in New York getting a guilty plea. Also, basically looking at kind of how that affects the rest of college basketball. We know Duke is obviously been in the news with regards to Zion Williamson. I asked Coach K the question that none of the assembled media really had the cojones to ask him in the podium sound that took place earlier today, but his breakout sound came out basically in a separate media session after the verdicts came out from New York, and here's what he had to say to my question that I asked him about the issues of college basketball.
With your role as USA Basketball and kind of almost being like an unofficial spokesperson for basketball in this country, how important is it for you to make sure that this underbelly of basketball is exposed and outed?
Well, I think, what's the avenue to do it? In other words, no, really, that my question to all of you would be,
how would you do it?
Let me finish.
Right.
All right. It's like when I'll give you an example of a practice, and one of my players, say Trey Jones, says, "Let's go," and he's really yelling in air when he really wants to. He's not sure of what you're doing, and he wants you to let's go. So he directs his comment, and it's specific. All of us here, every coach here can talk about the game, but then where does it go? What action steps are taken from any suggestions that you might have? And that process is not a clear one in our sport because it's not organized in such a fashion. Who runs college basketball? Can you tell me?
I would say as much as Mark Emmert tries to, he probably does.
Mark Emmert doesn't run college basketball. Mark Emmert is the president of the NCAA.
Yeah.
So you can't give me a name.
True.
And that's a problem because there's no pinpoint responsibility. There's no leadership. So it's run by committee. And so you can't have a $1 billion industry run by committee and have it keep up to date with all the things that can occur within that industry. And from outside competition, which the NBA is, and it's great, but it is, and we are totally reactionary to the NBA, totally. And then in situations like what just happened here, it was a court of law, not something that was done with the NCAA. Like what powers do the organization that's supposed to be responsible for our sport have in making sure our sport is done properly? So I have no problem with speaking up. And what's the forum for it? Is this the forum? That's cool, but I'm not sure that that's going to lead to anything. But if there was a way of incorporating the people who are very knowledgeable about the game, care about the game, in an organization and a structure where you can take thoughts into action. And look, I'm sorry, we don't have that. I've been working for over 40 years doing it, and we don't have that. And so, again, when I said that thing about blip, basically, and I apologize if it was taken the wrong way, but it was at my opening day press conference, and I was talking about my team, and I didn't want the entire press conference to be about something that I don't really know completely about. So I should have said a blip on the radar of college basketball. And that's a bad thing. Obviously, it's a bad thing because they just found these people guilty. Now, is it what's happening everywhere? I don't think so. And in the world that I'm competing in, it doesn't happen to me. So if you want me to say something, or someone wants me to say something, that it's happening everywhere, why would I say that if I don't believe it's happening everywhere? That's not me being naive. If someone who is saying it says we're naive, or me and Roy are naive, then be strong enough. If you know more about it, then you say it. All I'm saying is I don't lose guys because of someone cheating. That's true. I can tell you specifically from what I know, that's not what happens. If we could create a forum where that could be done, I'm all in. I'm all in. And but what am I all in? Where am I all in? That's So it's, to be quite frank with you, it's kind of frustrating, and but that's what it is.
That's head coach Mike Krzyzewski. Again, that's part of a larger rant you could see on our website, SportsTalkSC.com. Went about 15 minutes and kind of, again, more circular logic and crocodile tears. Your thoughts, guys, on what he had to say?
Well, I want to believe Krzyzewski because I happen to admire him and admire what he's done from a distance. We're not in Chapel Hill or Durham. We're not in the Triangle area there, so we're not close to those people at all. But I've always admired the program that he's built and the way that he runs his team. And nothing to me is more fun to watch than to go to Cameron and see how he's treated like a god there, and how he walks out of the locker room after everybody else has come out on the court. He's the last one out for whatever reason. Anyway, it's just fun to watch. I've always held him in pretty high regard. So I want to believe him, and I believe in giving people the benefit of the doubt. However, I find it hard to believe that a guy in his position, both in terms of college basketball and international basketball, would not know what's happening with Adidas and Nike and these companies. And, he and Roy Williams and Bill Self and Jim Boeheim and a few others recruit in a cocoon. They're not beating the bushes looking for some guy who is 5'11" and averaging 7-8 points a game, and maybe has some potential to make the team. They all recruit the top 15, 20, 25 players in a particular class every year. This select group of schools, throw Arizona in there as well, and maybe a few others crack that nugget every so often. So there, if he doesn't get a player because that player was bought, throw Louisville in there, Kentucky, if he doesn't get a player because that player was bought through this process, I can't believe he wouldn't know it, or his assistant coaches wouldn't know what was going on. Now, would they come out and say it?
No.
Exactly, because there's been this protective cocoon over these college basketball coaches. What's funny to me, guys, is how many Frank Martins and Brad Brownells and those at that level who, after all this came out, would say something like, well, we've known this has been going on for years in college basketball, but just nobody did anything about it. And now something is being done. You can't tell me that the people at the highest level who recruit the highest level of players did not know what was going on. As you put it quite well, Will, the underbelly of college basketball.
Well,
I just can't believe he would not know that was going on.
He knows it's going on because one thing, bottom line about Coach K, he wants to win, and he wants to win big. Remember years ago, hey, all of my players graduate. If they don't graduate, that banner doesn't go up there. Then suddenly he didn't get those players because it one and done. And suddenly he said, wait a minute, I'm going to have to shift my philosophy a little bit. So if you're telling me he doesn't know it, that's bull.
It's the biggest thing. It's almost like if these players were stocks, they only want certain people to be able to be buying those stocks. And I think they're just afraid that if this is all exposed, then there goes their ability to have this exclusive amount of player. And that's why they're not doing anything about it.
All right, stand by. We'll have more from Charlotte. We're going to talk some football as well. We got to break down Clemson and USC for this coming weekend. Back in a moment.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
Welcome back to Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, as we come to you from Operation Basketball at the ACC. It's our pleasure to welcome in the head coach of the Clemson Tigers, Brad Brownell, a familiar face. So we've seen all these different coaches come across. It's nice to at least see somebody who we're more accustomed to seeing.
There you go. Well, I appreciate that. It's good to be with you.
So as far as just where you sit right now, a couple of weeks in advance where the season is, where do you believe your team is, and how ready do you think you are to be able to take the floor November 6th?
Yeah, we're getting closer. I like the way we've been practicing. I think our effort has been good, and, we're trying to bring along our young guys and feel like we're getting great effort from them, and group that's been extremely coachable. We are had a couple of injuries. Elijah Thomas has had a sprained ankle and been out off and on here for the beginning of the season, but we're optimistic he's going to be better here by the end of the week, hopeful. And then Trey Jemison, one of our freshmen, has had some knee surgery, and so we've kind of had to be very careful with him, and he's going to be out at least another month to 6 weeks, I would think. So we'll figure that one out. Malik Williams is another guy that's been hurt. He's had a major concussion and just hasn't responded as well. So hasn't been out much. So it's kind of been a little bit tougher just in terms of numbers, especially along the front line at times. But I like the experience that we have with our team. I think our guys are giving great effort. And we obviously will find out much more as we kind of delve into playing other teams, which I think is important.
We've had a couple of conversations with you during the off season, and one of the things you said that stood out to me when we talked earlier in the fall is that you want to diversify this offense. You want to make sure that you're not just relying on the three-point ball. You're putting the ball inside. You're getting mid-range jump shots. How have you gone about that process, and how has that process gone for you?
Yeah, it's gone well. Certainly we want to utilize the three-point shot like most teams. I think, as you're seeing in basketball, players are more comfortable shooting from distance. The percentages are up. And so the common sense math tells you that you need to be shooting threes. Having said that, I think it's really important to have a good mix. And when you have good inside players, we have a very good inside player in Elijah Thomas. We got to make sure that we're getting him the ball. We don't need to be going 4 or 5 possessions, 6 possessions in a row and not getting an inside touch. We've got to make sure that we utilize him, in our offense and make him a prominent figure. I think he's a very good player, a guy who's going to have a very good senior season, and want to make sure that we're getting him touches.
How much has his offensive game developed since he's been at Clemson?
Well, he's always had good skill. I do think getting into better shape and just sticking with fundamentals on some things and just being a little more consistent has really helped. But he's been a very hard worker, especially the last 18 months. He's really put time into his body to get himself into the kind of condition where he can play, a good bit of minutes over a long period of time, not just in for 4, out for 3, back for 4, where he can go 8-9 minutes at a time and be productive. And he's a tremendous talent. He's a guy who can help us on both ends. He's one of the better defensive centers in our league. I think he really impacted our team on that side of the ball for us tremendously. I think he was the reason why we had such a good defense last year. And his ability to guard ball screens in multiple ways with his athleticism and his hands to defensive rebound are really important.
When you bring back a couple of guys, we're talking with Brad Brownell, Clemson head coach, when you bring back a couple of guys in Keese and Shelton, how much does that help you when you just have those two guys that, for lack of a better term, you don't have to worry about?
Yeah, no, it helps a lot from a variety of ways. Number one, they understand what you're trying to do. They kind of know you as a coach. Certainly better than the younger players, freshmen and new players coming to the program. It's those guys know when we need to be doing what we're doing. And as much as anything, it's also about those guys coaching the younger players themselves. And so we might be doing a drill and, Shelton or Marquise on the side will just tell a guy, you didn't pivot the right way. Coach doesn't like that, or pass the ball with your outside hand, or Make sure you have an outside hand on a catch. Just a lot of little things that they can help coach that you take for granted sometimes as a head coach till you don't have those guys there. And it's beyond the baskets they make or the assists they make. It's more what they bring to practice every day and the kind of relationship that you have with them where you've been through things.
I know.
So that's important.
I know when we've talked with you, at least over the course of the last couple of years, one of the things that you were warning, things you were concerned about was depth and how you go about creating quality depth. How do you feel about that with the infusion of the freshmen and the transfers you have? And it seems like you don't just have bodies anymore. You have actual players.
Yeah, I think we're getting better. I think we're getting better along those lines. I think that the guys that we have, whether it's a Clyde Trapp, an A.J. Oliver, John Newman, Hunter Tyson, Javen White, those are probably the 5 guys right now that I'm thinking about that have been in practice every day and are working and competing. I think those guys are doing well, and I think they're all deserving of minutes, and they're all guys that if they can stay in their lane and do what we need them to do, they're going to have a chance to help this team. And certainly our primary guys, Shelton Marquise, Elijah, David Scarra, Amir Sims, those guys are kind of the backbone of last year's team. But the depth that you mentioned, the 5 guys behind, a couple of freshmen, a couple of sophomores, and 1 grad transfer, those guys, their play is going to be significant because when you lose a guy like Gabe DeVoe who made almost 93s and the way he played the last month of the season, we got to figure some of that out. We got to have somebody scoring like that. It's not going to be at that level. The older guys will do a lot, but we need somebody to come in and play the game with confidence, with some freedom like Gabe did.
How much of that is out of necessity, but how much of that is out of the fact that those minutes have been earned?
Well, it's a little bit of both. You'll have to earn them. And
I know you don't just play anybody.
No, you're right. But we've got to figure out exactly what it is. And I think it's earning them is going to be different for each guy. They're not all the same player. David Scarra playing the 3 is going to be different than Hunter Tyson or A.J. Oliver playing the 3 and John Newman playing the 3. And all 4 of those guys could play the 3 at some point in the game. And so, even Clyde Trapp could play, and we could play 3 guards out there at one time because of Clyde's size at 6'4". So we kind of I've got to be versatile in how we look at some things from game to game. But we know our mainline guys are going to be there, but we do need productive support off the bench.
Talking with Brad Brownell, it all gets underway. An exhibition a week from Thursday with Barton, and then, of course, on Tuesday, November 6th, they host the Citadel at Little John Coliseum. Have you got your pre-tan worked out for the Cayman Islands?
I did not, and I probably won't be outside that much not anyway. You. I'll be in the film room of one of the ballrooms that we stay in, and in the gym a lot.
How does that just help you when it comes to ACC tournament?
It helps you in a couple ways. It helps you in the ACC tournament if you're lucky enough to play multiple days, but it also helps you in the ACC regular season when you play Saturday, Monday, Sunday, Tuesday, and you got these 36-hour turnarounds. And it's not the first time you've done it. You've done it either in the non-conference, in an occasional quick turnaround schedule, or in these tournaments where you play every day or every other day, so you're used to it. You guys know kind of what to expect with a quick turnaround.
Last one for you. I know you've been very outspoken about what's going on in New York, and I guess what would you like to see come out of that scenario, and just how prevalent is what has been talked about going on?
Well, I don't know if it's as prevalent as as everybody thinks. It certainly goes on, and it's disappointing, and it makes it extremely challenging for the people that are doing things the right way. What do I hope comes out of it? I hope it cleans our game up better. And I think a lot of guys feel that way. There are a lot of guys out there doing things the right way. And, there's a lot of things that get done in our sport because of the high majors and because of things that are happening with a few recruits or a few players going one and done and whatnot. But there's a vast majority of people and players doing things tremendously well in college basketball. And we need to get past this, but we need to get past it and learn some lessons and take care of a few things as well. So
enjoy the visit as always. Good
luck
this
buddy.
Year.
Thank you.
That's Clemson men's basketball coach Brad Brownell. More from Charlotte at the ACC Operation Basketball and Columbia as we continue on Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network.
The guys are always checking email. Send your comments or questions to talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, more of Sports Talk from Columbia's Main Street.
All right, great stuff from Will in Charlotte. Going to turn our attention here to football for a little bit. Of course, we're still right in the middle of a big football season, big week of football here. High school games, many more being moved to a Thursday night because of impending bad weather on Friday. High School League has got a complete list of games that have been moved to Thursday night. More games were added to the list that we gave you last night. We'll mention some of those a little bit later on. A couple of other things to pass along. ACC championship football game now officially will be an 8 o'clock kickoff on ABC on December 1st. So Clemson fans, you can make your plans for that accordingly. USC released its baseball schedule for 2019 today. They will open, the Gamecocks will, February 15th at home against Liberty. In fact, all February games will be at Founders Park. They don't leave Columbia until they go to Clemson March 1 to open the weekend series with the Tigers. Game 2 of that series in Greenville, Game 3 in Columbia. The SEC opening series will be home March 15th against Georgia. Other home SEC series will be Auburn, Texas A&M, Vanderbilt, and Kentucky. Road series will be against Tennessee, Alabama, Florida, Missouri, and Mississippi State. So the Gamecocks will avoid in the regular season LSU, Arkansas, and Ole Miss, which, if you ask me, you're avoiding perhaps 5 or 6 losses when you're talking about the quality of those teams. USC will face North Carolina and NC State in April games at BB&T Ballpark in Charlotte, and will take on Charleston Southern in late April in North Augusta at SRP Park. So that is the overview. We've got the story and the complete schedule on our website, SportsTalkSC.com. Chad Kelly's looking for a new home after the Broncos booted him today following his issues earlier this week at a Halloween party where he got a little bit, I guess we should say, crazy. Maybe crazy doesn't apply to Chad Kelly. Crazy would be normal for him. What's another? He was a little bit out of control, I guess we could say.
Yeah,
out of sorts.
He was
out of
weird.
sorts.
Something went on, and I'm going to blame Von Miller for this. I mean, when does he get too old to have a Halloween party? I mean, come on.
What do you mean?
I mean, why throw a Halloween party?
They're football players. Monday's their day off. They were going to party. That's all. Of course, Halloween's not till next week. Why would you do it a week and a half in advance? All right, I want to get to South Carolina, Tennessee, and then we'll talk Clemson, Florida State. And I think I would not lay the points in this one. I think this is going to be a close game. Yeah, I think Tennessee. I watched their Auburn game. I didn't watch the Alabama game because that's fruitless. But you watch a team that they are more comparable to, and it's more comparable to USC, and that was Auburn. And they went into Auburn 2 weeks ago, and they took it to Auburn on their home field. I mean, they were more physical. I think they were more emotional, and they made more big plays in that game. It even led to the Auburn crowd booing and hooting their team. That's right. It does happen other places outside of Columbia. I was very impressed. Garantano had a good game, threw the ball well. We know he's got some good receivers, including Callaway, who's a big-bodied receiver who can go up and get it. The running game was very good. They've got a couple of different running backs. Chandler is explosive, especially coming out of the backfield, catching passes. He set a Vols record by catching a touchdown pass. I think it was in 4 straight games. The other thing about Garantano is you better put some pressure on him because he's only thrown 2 picks this year. So you let him stand back there, chances are he's going to complete a pass against you.
I have no idea why you and I just see completely opposite on both of these games.
Well, I mean, we viewed the Clemson-NC State game oppositely, and I think we know who was correct there.
You know what I said, that Florida State was garbage? Tennessee is lower than garbage.
No,
Tennessee
you're
is
wrong.
Not,
they're going to come in thinking
come on.
They can win this game in Columbia.
Please.
And have their they had their breakthrough win against Auburn. That's their marquee win in their first year under their new coach.
These
and
are
they're
two
looking
of the
at
worst
South Carolina
teams
as
on both of these teams' schedules. The worst coach teams.
The Tennessee game I watched against Auburn was not a bad coach team. You know, if you want to look at them against Alabama, fine. Draw your own conclusion. But against Auburn, they look like a high-quality team.
And they were playing an Auburn team that had drama all around it. The Auburn team has completely lost the message of their head coach.
Well, they may have lost.
But they came back and won at Ole Miss.
But they came back and won at Ole Miss.
And dominated.
That's why I like Gus Malzahn. When every time when his foot is near that door, they're ready to kick him out, he always turns around and say, "Get out of my way. This is my office." The key point, Will, is this. South Carolina has been able to help opponents pummel them on occasion because why? They're playing two teams, themselves and the other team. That's what happened to Auburn. But that shows you what happens even with a good team like Auburn when they're playing against themselves. Even a team like Tennessee can beat them.
I think the bye week.
That's why this is an interesting game in my mind, because you're looking at two teams with the propensity to be playing. We may see 4 different teams on the field on Saturday, with Tennessee playing against themselves and South Carolina fighting themselves and trying to get a win against Tennessee.
I see what you're saying when it comes to South Carolina being afraid of its own shadow, but you're off a bye week. You get your biggest defensive playmaker back off of the injury. And I think South Carolina comes in as the more desperate team. And I just think that they'll play inspired as a result of that.
We shall see. I think it'll be I'm still going to pick South Carolina to win, just not cover. I'm going to pick Clemson to win, but they're not going to cover the 16.5 in Tallahassee. Now Florida State's got some weaponry now, and they've got a little confidence going. They got a little bit of swag in their step once again. A little swagger.
Walking through that door?
No, but you know who is? Nyquan Murray's walking through that door.
Chris Winkie walking through that door.
DeAndre Francois is walking through that door.
Peter Warwick walking
Cam
through that door.
Atkins is busting through that door. Jacques Patrick is busting through that door. They've got players. Now, their problem has been they have had a different offensive line starting 5 every game this year. The only team in FBS to have to start 7 different lineups. This will be the first time.
Doesn't have a defensive line that's any good.
This is the first time they will have gone back-to-back weeks, unless somebody gets hurt today, with the same starting 5 on their offensive line. That's been their problem. Look, they're not going to beat Clemson, but I think this is going to be, Clemson's going to make some mistakes on defense. Florida State's going to score. They might even score. Murray is not Murray. They have an excellent punt returner. Who's possible to break something big if Clemson has to punt, which I think they will a couple of times. I'm just saying, I think Florida State's got enough in the arsenal to make it a fourth quarter game, keep it reasonably close, but not enough to win. I think at the end of the day, Clemson will win.
I know you say they have players, but they've had players the last 2 years, and they've been a train wreck. So how do you explain
that? Now last year they lost their starting quarterback in the third quarter.
And more to do in the starting.
And they had to go with a true freshman. No, man, what are you talking about? They had to go with a true freshman quarterback.
So does Clemson.
Alabama.
So does Clemson. Clemson's going with a true freshman quarterback.
But Will Blackman was not being prepared to be the starting quarterback. Trevor Lawrence was. You're going to compare James Blackman to Trevor Lawrence? You're going to compare the two?
I'm not. I'm just telling you that's a fact.
Well, James Blackman was not being prepared to be the starting quarterback. Trevor Lawrence was. It was just a matter of time.
I understand.
Had Kelly Bryant gone down for the season in the opening game against Furman, Trevor Lawrence was ready to step in and be the guy. It was just going to be a matter of time.
Well, probably one of the problems that Florida State has, looking like a train wreck, is I think basically I'm going to play psychiatrist here. Jimbo Fisher had gone through the rough divorce, and he still led Florida State. And I think he checked out. After his quarterback went down, I think he checked out and was, hey, first time I get an offer to get out of this door, I'm going, and that's exactly what he did.
The Seminoles will need more than Dr. Phil to come within 17 this week against Clemson.
All right, well, you go ahead. You lay the points. See how that worked out for you last time when you did not think Clemson would cover. Go ahead.
Because I
continue to make a fool for yourself.
I'm recognizing the error of my ways and laying the points.
You got with
all
Clemson.
Day.
You got to know when to hold them and when to fold them when it comes to the Tigers. All right,
I'm all in like Mike Krzyzewski.
We'll be back.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
We are back. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Phil Kornbluth, Professor Tom Hayes, Brian Leonard at our plush Learfield Studios in downtown Columbia. Will Pelagic is at the Spectrum Center in Charlotte, where ACC basketball folks got together today. And now we welcome in the M&M boys to Sports Talk, Will Merritt and the pastor of Payne, Corey Miller, for our weekly gathering with these two fine gentlemen. Let's get right to things. And, Will, let's begin with you because Clemson had a resounding victory over NC State. And I think my take is that one thing that they wanted to show Alabama, Ohio State, whoever they might meet down the road, Notre Dame, is that you cannot line up to stop the run against these guys because they've got a quarterback who can throw it all over the field.
Well, I think you're exactly right. And I think that the one thing that Clemson is showing is that they're winning in different ways. Schematically, they're lining up very similar, but they're winning the ball games in different ways. One week they win it with, by running the football. The next week they win it by throwing the football. I don't think you can stack the box on them. At the same time, if you back off and try to go one-on-one in the box, they're gonna cram it down your throat because ETN and that offensive line is starting to gel together. So I think it was the most comprehensive look over the last 2 to 3 weeks of seeing just how dynamic this offense can be, and consequently, that's why they're in the top 10 in the country.
Yeah, Pastor of Payne, I mean, let's face it. It truly just makes Clemson unbeatable, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's what they're going to face, great teams in the playoffs like NC State and Wake Forest and Georgia Southern and Furman. I mean, they can line up and run the ball and do all that great stuff. But, hey, it's a great win. It's a great win. Kudos to you, Phil. You called that thing. You said it's going to be a rout.
Yes.
So you did say that. So congratulations on that great prognostication.
Thank you.
But when you look at it, look at last week, they played great. Of course, Etienne only had 39 yards rush, but he did have 3 touchdowns, and because NC State wasn't going to allow them to run the ball, but they don't have the secondary guys to match up the talent and speed and athleticism that Clemson has on the outside out in space, and so. But the reality is, to me, it's not just being the ultra Gamecock and all that. I'm just being honest here. But when I look at the game and when I watch them a lot, I still have to see more, and I have to see them, play a good quality opponent. Unfortunately, we're not going to get a chance to see that until they get in the playoff, unless they stub their toe somewhere. So I don't know still what I feel about Clemson. I think their defense, their front four, obviously, I think I would even go on to say their front seven is an elite group that can give anybody in the country issues. But I still have my reservations with an offensive line. I don't think they can. You watch them. I mean, they don't get great push. I mean, and they played against some pretty bad defenses. So my thing is, I'm still concerned about the offensive line. And again, the freshman quarterback, yeah, it looks good. He's playing 7-on-7 with some of the bad teams that they're playing. So I think they got great talent across the board. But I think just like last year, what I was preaching last year, they was blowing these teams out. But when they played a team that's on the same level or has more talent, I think they're going to struggle. And I think we're going to see the same thing this year with the Clemson football team.
It's so funny how many years we've been doing this show, and it's like a broken record. You say the same thing year after year, and yet year after year we're in the playoff. We're winning national championships. We're playing for national championships. We're beating Ohio States in playoffs. We're beating Oklahoma's in playoffs. We're beating the pants off of these people in playoffs. Yeah, we have only won one national championship in 3 years, but hey, we've been there 3 times. It's the same broken record every year. You go out and play the teams on your schedule, and when you're blowing people out, you got to give them some credit.
All right, come on. We can't understand you when you're both talking. Go ahead, Pastor.
Hold on. 2 out of the 3 times, that's winning money, brother. Right? 2 out of the 3 times, I was right. That's a high percentage. So you can say we're winning championships. Well, no, you're not. You won 1 in 35 freaking years. Okay? Alabama has won 5 and about every other year. So don't start equating yourself. Yeah, you're a really good program. You're trending in the right direction. I'm giving you credit. I said they'll be a playoff team. But what I said 2 out of the 3 years that they were going to lose, and they did. And so you can keep going out. We beat Ohio. Fine. There you go. Way to go. But you lost 2 out of the 3. And so that's a losing record. Okay? That's fact. So don't say I say the same thing every year. I'm just being realistic.
All right.
The one thing that Corey did say that I agree with is that we aren't going to see a team that Clemson or that should hang with Clemson until the playoff, and that includes this week. Corn and I are in very, very stark disagreement on how we think this Florida State team is going to look like on Saturday. I think they're a bunch of trash guys. I don't know how you guys feel.
Will? Mary?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know how well they're coached right now. That's the thing that I have to question about Florida State. And I'm not saying it's a bad coaching staff. I just don't know that they have an identity yet. I think that is one thing that they're struggling with at Florida State. I mean, you don't go year after year after year signing 4- and 5-star guys and not have a roster full of talented guys. Okay, Jimbo Fisher didn't leave the cupboard bare as far as athletes. I just don't know that they don't look like they're together. They don't look like they're on the same page. I thought Florida State was going to be able to run the football with Cam Akers this year and that big offensive line with as well as anybody in the country, especially with Francois being able to stretch the field with his arm. And that's just not happening, guys. They can't run the football to save their life. They don't know what they're doing between the tackles. And I think that poses a huge problem for them against the front 7 of Clemson.
Yeah, I mean, their big issue has been health of their offensive line. As I mentioned earlier, they've had a constant turnover on the offensive line. But
that's right.
But Pastor, I think Clemson will win. I just don't think they'll cover the 16.5. I think they're walking into kind of a dangerous situation. Florida State's won 3 out of 4. It's taken them some time to kind of get their feet planted under Taggart and the things that he's trying to do there. But I look at
be 4 in a row, Phil.
Yeah, they lost to Miami by a point in a game that they could have won. They have got weapons, and I mean, I think they're going to bust some plays against Clemson, score a few points here and there. Not enough to win the ball game, but I think it'll be like a touchdown or so game going into the final minutes. Pastor?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I agree with Will, too. I think, just that they got talent. Jimbo Fisher definitely brought in talent. The offensive line has really been the main problem when you talk about their offense because they can't protect the quarterback. The guy's getting hit, he's getting killed. But it's one of those games where I think they're going to be up for it. I think they're tired of seeing Clemson really becoming their daddy in the ACC. So you know they're going to compete. You know, when you play the number 2 in the country, come to your backyard. So I'm with you, Phil. I think the game's going to be closer because here's the thing: they got athletes on defense, on that defensive line that can rush the passer. And I'm interested to see how Trevor Lawrence play in that atmosphere against really good talent, speed that can compete even on the outside in the secondary. I think Clemson probably scoots by, but I tell you what, if they turn the ball over or, things like that and keep Florida State around, they could lose the game. Now, one more point, Phil. Last year, Blackman, the backup quarterback, came into Clemson in their backyard and really was driving to take the lead in that ball game. He made one major mistake on their side of the field and threw an interception. Clemson ended up winning. That game was close last year.
Yeah.
Well, it reminds you of the 2003 game for Clemson, coming off the Wake Forest game, not a lot to lose. The other teams coming into your house, they were ranked 3rd in the country that year. We're ranked 2nd in the country this year. Eerily similar to Florida State's got nothing to lose right now. Clemson, I think, was 4-3 that year as well before they had the big win for Coach Bowden. I mean, very, very similar situation with Florida State. And listen, guys, the home team typically wins this game. 13 out of the last 16 years, the home team's won this game. Doak Campbell is not an easy place to go in and win. I mean, Clemson has got a daunting task ahead of them.
All right, hang on, guys. We're going to come back and talk about South Carolina and Tennessee. One thing I want to say as we go into the break is that there'll be a lot of pressure on Tremaine Ankrum at right tackle because I think for the most part he'll be the player charged with slowing down Brian Burns coming off the edge. That guy, watching him line up for Florida State, it's a lot like South Carolina used Clowney, or like the Texans are using Clowney. They move him all around. They have him standing up. He kind of gets in that sprinter stance coming off the edge a lot of times, and he's got that speed and that direct line to the quarterback. So Ankrum will have a lot on his, and he usually lines up, from what I've seen, he usually lines up on the left side of their defense, which means the right tackle for Clemson. And you'll wonder if Clemson will have their scheme set up to keep a back in or maybe a tight end over there to try to chip him and knock him off his feet.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Okay, we're back. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. We are with the M&M boys, the pastor of Payne, Corey Miller. Watched you last night on the television there, Pastor, with Kerry Rich and Mr. Gurley. Yeah, very nice. Nicely done. Very informative. Enjoyed that. And Mr. Merritt, Will Merritt, former Clemson offensive lineman, joining us as well. Also former radio analyst for the Tigers and a television analyst as well. Let's go to USC, Tennessee. And I look at Tennessee. I went back and watched their Auburn game. I didn't watch their game against Alabama because I figured, what's the use? But watching them against Auburn, Corey, they look like the more physical, more confident team. They took it to Auburn on the Plains that particular day. If they come in with that same kind of attitude, I think this will be a very close game. I look for the Gamecocks to win, but I don't see a cover here either.
Well, let me just say this. I mean, yeah, they play great against Auburn. And the fact that I know a lot of those folks on that staff, very good friends with Jeremy Pruitt and work with him, not really work with him, but saw the development with my son down at Alabama. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to be physical. They're going to get after you. He's going to run a lot of pressure. He's going to try to affect the quarterback a lot. I was there last week in Knoxville watching Alabama. Listen, they have talent. They got receivers that are 6'3", 6'4". Matter of fact, a couple of times those corners from Alabama had trouble with the 50-50 ball. They got good running backs. They can run with power and speed. They can get on the outside, try to get on the edge. The quarterback, Garetano, is a good player, got knocked out in that ball game. But Chris came in through 2 touchdown passes against Alabama, 2 scores they had from the offensive standpoint. This is a good team that's won 3 games, guys. I mean, listen, South Carolina is going to have to play their best football to beat Tennessee. Now, they can attack Tennessee on the offensive side, I think, in the secondary because they're young back there. Bryce Thompson, homecoming for him, played at Dutch Fort, was committed to South Carolina. He has some actually got good talent, played pretty good, but he gives up some plays. And I think South Carolina needs to go after him with Debo Samuel and Brian Edwards. I think they can have some success there, but eventually they're going to have to run the football with some type of success. Here's the thing. My opinion, Phil Kornblue, it is a must-win for the Gamecocks. I'm talking about bowl. If things don't get tough for them on the road to Ole Miss, early game, 11 o'clock, got to turn around and go to Florida, top 15 team. I mean, got Clemson on the road. If they don't win this game, they're going to have a difficult time, in my opinion, making a bowl game. I think it's that important. Now, do I think they can win this game homecoming night? Fans going to be great atmosphere? Yes. But if we see the South Carolina that we've seen first half against A&M or even against Missouri, they'll come away with a loss. Tennessee can beat this team. They're going to have to play an A-, B+ type of football game to win it.
Well, Pastor, when we look at South Carolina, and we talk about they've had the bye week to kind of refresh themselves. And everybody always talks about the nicks, the injuries, Wanham coming back. But this team, Pastor, it looks like when South Carolina takes the field a lot this year, they're playing against 2 teams, the opponent and themselves. From a mental refreshment standpoint, what can a coaching staff do to get his team, A, to relax, and B, to execute?
Well, I think, what they did this week, you go and self-evaluate, you go through the film, you go through some things, try to simplify some things, and help them play better. They need to relax and get to the point where they can have fun. Football is fun. They shouldn't go out there stressed. Jake Bentley don't need to be amped up and hyped up. It's a blessing to be on that football field. Just relax and play. The linebackers, who I've been very critical of up to the A&M game, where they played their best, they practice well. They're playing with more confidence. Bryce Allen Williams, Green, all these guys, Bronson, they got to play well. They were bad fits, head in the wrong place. Guys is making little mental errors, and I've been saying that these things are fixable, and they did that against A&M. So if they can just put it together, I mean, they have been in games. They just got to play a complete game, have fun again, and play with great confidence. And I think the big thing is mentally for them, Pro, they haven't had confidence. Well, I think the Georgia game ruined them. They allowed that game, that one loss, to be 2 or 3 losses. I really do believe that because they went into this game thinking that they could beat Georgia at home, that they could get back in the SEC race, and they got smoked. and I think that was a confidence killer. But I think right now we're seeing Will Muschamp slowly instilling that confidence back into this team, and they're going to need that on Saturday.
Let's be honest, guys. And Will, you said this with Florida State. I mean, from that perspective, I have the same feeling about Tennessee. This is just not a very well-coached ball club. They have talent, but they're just not well-coached.
Come on, let's call it like it is. I mean, Corey, you can be a Tennessee cheerleader all you want to, but let me tell you something. They got blown out by West Virginia, blown out by Florida, blown out by Georgia, blown out by Alabama. They beat a halfway decent Auburn team. This is a 500 Auburn team. That's not a great win. This is not a good Tennessee team. You want to talk about playing bad opponents? This is a bad opponent. I've watched Tennessee play twice this year. My best friend lives in Knoxville. I've watched a couple of games on the phone with him talking about things. This is a joke Tennessee team. This is a must-win. I agree with that. If South Carolina doesn't win this ball game, it's a sinking ship. This is a must-win for South Carolina, and I don't think they need to just win it. I think they need to win convincingly. I think it's at home. You're going to have the crowd behind you. You've got a night game. You've got homecoming. You've got everything you could ever want to set it up, to come off of a bye week, 2 weeks to prepare. Don't give me this thing of that this is a Peyton Manning-led Tennessee team. This is a garbage Tennessee team. And I think South Carolina has got a wonderful opportunity to go out there and make a statement against a type of program that has a name behind it. This would not be like an Ole Miss win or a Mississippi State win. Even though those would be good wins, beating a Tennessee is still beating Tennessee. And this is a great year to beat a really bad Tennessee football team.
I agree with you. I don't think South Carolina Corey, I don't think South Carolina should ever apologize about beating Tennessee. I don't care about Tennessee's shape. No. You're talking about South Carolina. Anytime you can get a W against the T for South Carolina, that's big.
Yeah, I mean that they got more championships in that arena than Clemson. So this is a more historical program than Clemson. But my point is, those teams that Will just talked about, those losses, well, let me just remind you, all four of those teams are in the top 15 in the country. So those are their losses: Alabama, West Virginia, Georgia. And yes, Auburn was they beat Auburn. And then what was the other one you said? But it's four top.
But Corey, they didn't just lose to them; they got destroyed by all of them. They didn't compete in any of those games.
Great teams, and I think they're well coached. And by the way, Chris Rumph, several Gamecocks still on the staff, defensive line coach. You got Wilson, Shaq Wilson, that played at South Carolina as well, helping out too. Byron Gerardo's on that staff. So several Gamecocks, and you throw in Bryce Thompson. So a lot of South Carolina connections coming in. I agree. South Carolina.
Is Rump playing? Is he suiting up? Is Rump playing? Is Chris Rump playing, or is he coaching?
You know, I tell you what. If you were to, you look at Tennessee's staff, and you mentioned Chris Rumph and Charles Kelly, who was at Florida State.
I love Chris Rumph. I love that.
Terry Fair, Will Friend. This is a Chris Winkie is one of their coaches. Sure. Tracy Rock. They've got a coaching staff that would make a great All-American team.
Absolutely, they do, but they're not playing.
No, they're not playing. But I will say this, guys: they have some talent at certain positions that can compete. Their defensive front are very veteran-oriented. They can get after you. They weaken the secondary. That's why I think South Carolina can win. Linebackers still, they got one guy that's pretty good. Offensive line, just pretty solid, but not great. They got great running backs. On offense, they got great skill players. And I'm trying to tell you that can play. Yeah, they're not complete. He didn't inherit a team that's all kind of mess going on. I just saw Butch Jones just the other day. I mean, it's just one of these things. You got to still play well because they are well coached. Since you mentioned the staff, they're well coached, and they're going to play physical. They've taken on that brand of Alabama. It's going to take 2 or 3 years. One thing I promise you, Jeremy Pruitt will turn this program around. So if you're going to get Tennessee, you better get them now because it's going to be a really good football team. There's a period with Alabama in that second quarter when Chris came in the game, that offense is pretty solid. So, and they played against a pretty good defense. So this is not no one you just show up with a block seed and win. They need to play their best football if they're going to even beat Tennessee. And by the way, Tennessee would probably be the third best team in the ACC. That's how trash that conference is.
All right, you get the last shot in. Thank you, guys. The M&M boys will merit the pastor of pain. He delivered a little shot to the ribs there at the end. Corey Miller. We're coming back with more from Charlotte. And, of course, we've got recruiting coming your way, too. Don't go away.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Back here on Sports Talk, and we're joined by the dynamic duo on the backcourt for Clemson, Marquise Reed and Shelton Mitchell, who are joining us here on Sports Talk as we get ready for the upcoming season. Guys, thank you so much for coming by. We appreciate you having us.
Thanks for having us.
So as far as this goes, I know, Keith, you had a little wardrobe issue here at the beginning we were talking about earlier. You had no shoes, I guess?
Yeah, so I forgot my left shoe on my loafers today. Thank God Coach came through, and he wears size 13 like me.
So you're a size 13 like me. That's not an easy shoe size to fill.
Yeah, it's not.
So I guess you're wearing just regular shoes now, I guess?
Yeah, got my KDs right now.
Gotcha, okay. How did it, I guess, with you guys in the offseason, and I'll start with you, Keith, and Shelton, you can add in as well, the pre-draft process, kind of going through that with the league, how did you guys respond kind of with each other as going through that process?
We communicated every day. We talked a lot about what was going on with each other. We was working out in different locations, actually. Shelton was in Charlotte and Cali. I was in Florida and D.C., so we was going back and forth between the two locations, just getting ready for workouts and things like that, and then still on top of trying to graduate. So it was a pretty smooth process. It wasn't that bad.
Shelton, what did you learn about that process?
Just the attention to detail with everything. I mean, everything is like down to a science of the things you need to improve on, what you need to work on, stuff like that.
As far as just kind of what was the thing that, for both of you, Shelton first and then Marquise, what do you think was the thing that they told you the most that you need to improve on before you work on going to the league?
I'll probably say like the different finishes around the rim. Really just everything, really tighten everything up, try to improve on every single aspect on offense, defense, just everything.
Keys?
Yeah, improve my percentages a little bit. Maybe looking for that 50-40 range, 50 from the field, 40 from 3. So improve my percentages, different finishes around the rim, like Sean said, and defense, like crowding up over ball screens. Little stuff that you can fix.
The one thing that I hear from a lot of people who kind of scoff at the NBA and say they don't play defense, that is definitely a myth.
Yeah, definitely.
Not
100%.
How would you, I guess, characterize the level of defense that's played in the NBA compared to what you guys have to do at Clemson?
I think it's about the same. I mean, Coach Brownell, he's a defensive coach. If you can't guard your man and can't guard the way he wants you to guard, you can't play it. And that's the same way probably in the next level. I mean, all those guys are great players and stuff like that.
One of the things, Keith, I was talking about with Coach Brownell is that he kind of he kind of can leave you guys alone, kind of defend for yourself when it comes to, the teaching parts of the game, because this team is so freshman-laden and newcomer-laden. How much of that do you think that he's kind of maybe taken off some of the heat and pressure off of you guys?
He basically just looks for us to lead. He wants the team to be driven by the team. So instead of him doing everything, he wants me, Show, and Eli, Scorer, and Lyles to, orchestrate, demonstrate, because we've been through it before. We been in college 4 years, so we know what it takes, and we know the system inside out by now. So he leans on us a lot.
Clemson guard Marquise Reed, Clemson guard Shelton Mitchell joining us here on Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. The Tigers get ready on the 6th to take care of the Citadel, as that will at least begin the regular portion of the season. They play a week from Thursday against Barton, an exhibition open to the public at Little John Coliseum. Shelton, who among the newcomers is your favorite guy to watch?
All of them in different ways. I mean, seeing Javen when he's dunking on people and going to the basket and stuff like that can be exciting. And John when he's playing defense, guarding people full court, and then Hunter when he gets hot, it's crazy. So it looks like every shot is going in because he has great range and great size. So all of them are fun to watch at different times.
Marquise, as far as the NCAA tournament experience last year,
yeah.
I was there in the locker room with you guys and saw the hurt from the loss that you guys took to Kansas. How much of that do you carry with you? How much of that do you tell those who weren't here that you want to get back to that point and beyond that point this year?
Yeah, it hurt pretty bad, especially when you didn't play your best. we just tell the new guys that that you never know what's going to be your last game in the tournament. First game you play, you can be going home and the season can be done. So just try to keep those guys motivated and let them know what it takes to get there and what we got to do to get back there.
Shelton, how much did it help playing a couple of days in the ACC tournament in order to get ready for going out to San Diego, playing the 2 games in 2 days, and then getting ready for the Omaha pod?
Right. I think it's great because, the ACC, it's the best basketball conference there is, and having tournament right before you go to the NCAA tournament is great. You get to play against the best teams in the country, best competition in the country, and all that gets you ready to play against whoever. Every team in the ACC is probably pound for pound for one of the best teams in the country and bring different things to the table, so it gets you ready for whoever you're going to play against.
Now, I called you guys on the way in a dynamic duo. You were a trio last year when you think about Gabe DeVoe, and I see you guys smiling because you know what he brought to the table and how much he was able to help you guys offensively as a fill-it-up type scorer. One of the things your coach has told me is that you guys need to have a more diverse offense this year and not be so reliant on the 3. Keith, how have you guys worked to try and make sure that the ball does get inside and is actually a quality post touch, and that opens up the rest?
We've been looking at a few different offense. We like to get on transition. And, that was hard for teams when we had 4 guys bringing it, me, Shelton, Dante, and Gabe. So, we had to tweak a little bit of things up. Got Scarver. We can go with a big lineup with Scarver, go small with John Newman. And we've just been putting in some new offenses to get Eli a couple more touches, because when he gets the ball in there, he scores it. He has some crazy percentage in live practices and shooting 70% from the field. So we got to get him some touches down there.
Shelton, when it's not falling, what has to kind of come in your mind to make sure that you're at least doing enough to facilitate for the rest of the guys out there on a night where either you or Marquise might not be hitting those shots?
I think it's like you said, just facilitating. Both, like you said, both of us can score, but that's not all we can do to our games. Both of us can pass, defend, and even the shots aren't falling, you can still lead. Still making sure guys are in the right position, knowing what to do on defense, stuff like that.
How much are you guys looking forward to the Cayman Islands?
Oh, yeah. That's a nice place. And it's going to be some good competition out there. Probably not going to be too many people at the games, but that's all right.
I was trying to lobby with Brad to get you guys some time outdoors so that you at least get to experience that a little bit.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Talk to him a little bit. Yeah.
How do you guys balance just trying to create your own atmosphere there? Because, you guys have done this before when it comes to these games where, you're either in a ballroom or a high school gym. There's not a lot of fans. And how do you go about making sure that you're kind of at least trying to bring that same intensity?
I think we just need to bring our own energy. No matter who's there, no matter how many people are in the crowd. Basketball should still be fun no matter what. If a bunch of people are watching, if no one's watching. So really just creating our own energy, being exciting for each other, no matter what, that'll help a lot.
I think the one game last year, Keith, that people looked at and really thought, okay, this team is for real, is when y'all played Florida. And I think that was the kind of, okay, Clemson's arrived. What has the ride been like since then? And now it just seems like there is more of a spotlight on this team than there ever has been.
Yeah, I think, like you said, that was the start of it last year. And we used that game as momentum. We beat some ranked teams every year, and I think last year we finally capitalized and basically just kept the momentum going. In those games that we weren't closing out 2 years ago, we was closing out last year. So that all comes with doing time.
Biggest personal goals for Shelton?
I'd probably say just to lead. I feel like if I lead and do the best thing for the team and leading these young guys, I think all the other goals and awards will come with that.
And Keith?
Be a better leader this year for my senior year and get some all ACC honors.
Marquise Reed, Shelton Mitchell. Again, Clemson gets underway a week from Thursday against Barton College, and then they play the following Tuesday against the Citadel. That opens up the 2018-19 basketball season for the Tigers. Guys, thank you so much. Good luck this year.
Thank you.
Those are the words of the Clemson backcourt. We'll wrap up the show coming up from Charlotte as well as Columbia as ACC Operation basketball coverage continues on Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
And a big reason for that, not the primary reason. I mean, I think I'm the primary reason. Pro would be the secondary reason. Will would be the tertiary reason. Brian would be the fourth reason to tune into Sports Talk. Is that fair? Is that a fair assessment? No,
not really, because
Mr. Tertiary was sitting here, he disagreed.
Because if Brian gets ticked off, he can cut all our mics off.
Yes, he would. He has that kind of power. It is recruiting time here on Sports Talk. And also, we got time. We've had folks calling, haven't been able to get to you. If you want to jump on board here in the final minutes, 800-956-7266. Oh, I need to mention two things that I promised to mention. The Anderson Touchdown Club, Friday, noon at the Anderson County Library. I'll be there to speak to the good folks about the football season, about recruiting and all that kind of stuff. So if you are a member, look forward to seeing you. If you're not a member, but you want to jump in there, I'm sure they'll be happy to take your money and let you have lunch. So make plans to join us there on Friday for that. And also got a text message today from Antoine Seawright, who works with former Clemson star Mike Williams, to let us know that on Friday night, and their game is still on Friday night, at least he said so, they'll be honoring Mike Williams at Lake Marion High School with his jersey retirement. Outstanding athlete jersey retirement ceremonies, how they're wording it there at Lake Marion High School. So for those of you who are fans of Mike Williams or Lake Marion grads or whatever the case may be, make plans to being there for that. They'll do it at halftime of the Lake Marion football game. Okay? So congratulations to Mike. Must be an off weekend for the Chargers, I would say. Don't think they let him fly across the country for that. Now to recruiting. And we begin with the, once again, the news earlier tonight from Ryan Helinski, the quarterback, USC commitment out in California, who put on Twitter that he is reaffirming his commitment to South Carolina. If anybody were doubting him after the Stanford offer in particular, kind of raised maybe a small red flag of concern, because Stanford, he had stated, was his dream offer, but he is sticking with South Carolina. I think this is the end of any of that now, since he's gone on Twitter once again. And he told us earlier today that he and his parents are coming to Columbia as planned for this game on Saturday night. They also plan to find a house because the family will be moving to South Carolina, and his other brother will be going to med school somewhere in the state. So they're in the process of taking care of all that. So you can put all that to rest now. The other breaking recruiting news today is that Dante Scott, the 6'6" big guard small forward out of Philly, South Carolina, was one of his 5 finalists. He committed to Maryland. 2020 receiver Jalen Hyatt of Dutch Fork was back at Clemson last weekend. He's been to Clemson a lot, and he's been very impressed with what he has seen there on the field, around the campus. Of course, if you are a receiver, you got a chance to catch balls from Trevor Lawrence. That is certainly intriguing. He's been very impressed with what he has seen from Lawrence. He was offered Tuesday by Indiana. Duke, Virginia Tech, and Virginia are the others on his list. Clemson, he thinks, will offer him. He feels like it's definitely coming. They've been recruiting him hard. He feels like an offer is coming. Hasn't happened yet, but he thinks it will. He had considered going to USC this Saturday night for the Tennessee game, but that's not going to take place at this time. He is talking with USC receivers coach Brian McClendon. He said USC is recruiting him hard, but Clemson is definitely recruiting him harder at this point. He has also been to games at Duke and Virginia Tech. He's going to return to Blacksburg November 17th for the Miami game. USC offered cornerback Marcus Banks of Houston. He decommitted from LSU last week. He has taken officials to Alabama, Texas A&M, and LSU. USC also offered 2020 defensive lineman Jamarian Latham out of Reform, Alabama. That was his first offer. 2020 defensive lineman Xavier McIver of Cheraw was at Clemson Saturday. He also was at USC for Georgia and Texas A&M. He might return for the Tennessee game. Clemson is not yet offered, but he favors the Tigers at this point. Offensive lineman Jimmy Frishy of Greenville visited Clemson Saturday. The Tigers like him as a potential offer at offensive tackle. He was a tight end until he kind of blew up physically, and now they like him as a tackle. He has offers from Nebraska and Purdue, among others. He's also been to Appalachian State, Vanderbilt, and Coastal Carolina this season. He also plans to visit North Carolina and Nebraska for games. And he has an official visit with Syracuse November 28th and one with Villanova the following weekend. Cornerback Colin Duncan in Montgomery, Alabama, said USC, Mississippi State are his top two at this point. He is still open to others. He was at USC for the A&M game. He also went to Mississippi State for the Florida game. Running back Eileen Ford of West Florence, 2020 corner Christian Miller of Hilton Head, 2020 offensive lineman, defensive lineman Ryan Jackson of Lebanon, Tennessee. Those are three more players who plan to be at South Carolina on Saturday. In basketball news, besides the Dante Scott information, 6'3" Letitia Amahir of Milton, Ontario, is announcing on November 14th, USC, Kentucky, and Louisville, her finalist. She's the 10th ranked prospect in her class, number 2 post player by ESPN. And there's video of her in a game dunking. Not just dunking, but flushing it. Well, one hand. Can you flush it with one hand? Yeah, she's going up with one hand and just stuffing
the ball
it.
Is smaller.
Well, don't take away from her dunk.
I didn't.
So there you go. You know, you are a male chauvinist. No wonder you've been married like 4 times. Male chauvinist pig. As soon as I say something nice about a female basketball player, you got to come up with an excuse.
All I said was the ball is a little bit smaller.
6'9" Elias King of Snellville, Georgia, will take an official visit to Mississippi State this weekend and then USC the next weekend, he told Rivals. He's been committed both to Georgia and Xavier at one time or another.
Interesting.
And let's see. Baseball. Infielder Ivan Johnson of Chipola Junior College in Florida committed to USC for the 19 class. He played at Georgia last season, and he's a switch hitter. He hit .239 in 32 games, 11 starts for an NCAA tournament team. 8 of his starts were at second base. So he went from Georgia to Chipola, and from Chipola, he plans to come to USC. There you go with recruiting for now. Don't forget to check it out regularly on our website, SportsTalkSC.com, and on Twitter. Use the hashtag STRecruiting to take you to our stuff. Now, tomorrow night we'll be in Charleston. Looking forward to being down in the Holy City for a Sports Talk on the road as we travel around the state, of course, with our Sports Talk preview shows. The Pigskin Preview Show, we're going to be at the Carolina Ale House on Calhoun Street in downtown Charleston. Not too far from the College of Charleston.
You're going to run into any high school football traffic? Any games going to be played Thursday down there?
Absolutely, there'll be games being played, but I don't think it'll affect us. So if you're in the area, you're a Citadel fan, we're going to have a bunch of Citadel folks over there. Coach Brent Thompson's coming over. One of the basketball coaches will be coming over. Come by and see us, Carolina Ale House on Calhoun Street in beautiful downtown Charleston. Look forward to being there for that tomorrow night. So we'll have that for you on Sports Talk. World Series, game number 2. Did you watch it last night?
Yeah, I watched it. I thought it went like I thought it would. For whatever reason, the Dodgers ace, he can't do it in the postseason. Something happens to him. But then again, the Red Sox are one of those teams that I don't care. It seems like the better the pitcher, the better they want to dissect that pitcher.
2-out RBI hits for this team is unbelievable. Yes. That has been the thing that has carried them all season and postseason. They just have a knack for coming up with the big hit. And plus that lineup, they just grind you. If you're a pitcher, they just grind you down with all the foul balls and just keeping bats alive and 2-strike hits and things of that nature and those big 2-out hits. So anyway, I don't care who wins. I hate both teams. I'm just glad the Lakers haven't won.
And I think the Dodgers were affected by that little nippiness last night, the weather.
Yeah, it's going to be cold tonight, maybe even colder. All right, that'll do it. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Pro. Thanks to Will in absentia. And we'll see you tomorrow night from Charleston. Have a great night, everybody.